Imagine a single act of kindness costing you everything, only for that loss to fuel an unimaginable return. In the gleaming heart of Milan, where the sharp angles of modern architecture pierced the sky and the relentless pulse of urban life echoed through the cobblestone streets, stood Apex Innovations, a titan in the competitive tech industry. Known for its groundbreaking software and its fiercely driven, often unforgiving, corporate ethos, Apex Innovations demanded unwavering dedication and a singular focus on the bottom line from its employees. Within the bustling marketing department, a young woman named Elena Rossi shone brightly. Her innovative campaigns and insightful strategies had been instrumental in bolstering Apex's market share, and her colleagues admired her sharp intellect and tireless work ethic. Yet beneath Elena's professional exterior lay a deep well of empathy, a quiet compassion that extended beyond the demanding deadlines and strategic meetings that defined her days. Each morning, as the city stirred to life, Elena's commute took her past a small, neglected park, tucked away amidst the urban sprawl. It was there that she first encountered a forlorn creature, a scrawny, mud-caked street dog with eyes that held a weary resignation. The dog, a testament to the city's indifference to its strays, would scavenge for scraps amongst the discarded refuse. Elena, her heartstrings tugged by the animal's obvious hunger and vulnerability, began to carry a small pouch of food with her, leftover pasta from her dinner, a piece of cheese she'd saved from her lunch. It was a small private ritual, a quiet act of human kindness extended to a creature in need, a fleeting moment of connection amidst the city's cold indifference. She named him Shadow, a silent acknowledgement of his transient existence on the fringes of urban life. Over the ensuing weeks, a fragile thread of trust began to weave itself between Elena and Shadow. He would learn to recognize her approach, his tail offering a tentative wag of anticipation. He would accept the food she offered with a gentle gratitude that resonated deeply within Elena, a silent acknowledgement of the shared vulnerability in a world that often overlooked the marginalized. This small, daily exchange became a precious anchor for Elena, a reminder of the simple beauty of connection in the often cutthroat world of corporate ambition. However, this quiet act of compassion did not remain unseen. A high-ranking executive at Apex Innovations, a man named Vittorio Mancini, whose reputation for ruthless efficiency and unwavering adherence to company protocol preceded him, happened to witness Elena's morning ritual. Mancini, a staunch believer in projecting an image of pristine corporate professionalism, viewed Elena's interaction with a street dog as an unacceptable breach of conduct. In his narrow worldview, associating with a stray animal, particularly in the vicinity of Apex's gleaming headquarters, was not only unhygienic, but also a potential stain on the company's carefully cultivated image. Without so much as a preliminary inquiry or an opportunity for Elena to explain her compassionate gesture, Mancini summoned her to his imposing office. The ensuing meeting was brief, cold, and utterly devastating. Elena was accused of violating company policy, of projecting an unprofessional image that could tarnish Apex's reputation, and of potentially attracting disease-carrying animals to the vicinity. Despite Elena's heartfelt attempts to explain the harmless nature of her actions and the simple empathy that motivated her, Mancini remained unmoved, his decision swift and absolute. Elena Rossi was terminated, effective immediately. The dismissal struck Elena like a physical blow, shattering her professional aspirations and leaving her reeling with a profound sense of injustice. Her career at Apex Innovations had been more than just a job. It was her passion, her source of pride and identity. To lose it so abruptly, for an act of simple kindness, felt like a cruel and unwarranted punishment. She walked out of the sterile office building that day, her dreams for the future clouded by a heavy sense of unfairness. Shadow, waiting for her as always near the park, seemed to sense her distress, nudging her hand with his wet nose and offering a silent, unwavering comfort. What Vittorio Mancini and the other executives at Apex Innovations failed to perceive was the quiet resilience and unwavering determination that lay beneath Elena's outwardly gentle demeanor. They had mistakenly equated her compassion with weakness, her empathy with a lack of corporate ambition. They had no inkling of the quiet fire that now burned within her, fueled by the bitter taste of injustice. They could never have conceived the audacious plan that began to take root in her mind, a plan that would lead her back to Apex Innovations, not as a dismissed employee seeking reinstatement, but as something far more formidable. The company that had so carelessly discarded her was about to learn a shocking and unforgettable lesson about the true value of human kindness and the unforeseen and potentially devastating consequences of corporate callousness. The act of feeding a street dog would ultimately lead to a corporate power shift that no one at Apex Innovations could have ever imagined. The sterile silence of her small apartment amplified the turmoil within Elena. The abrupt dismissal from Apex Innovations had left a gaping void, not just in her daily routine but in her very sense of self. The sleek, glass tower that housed the company had once symbolized her aspirations, a testament to her hard work and dedication. Now it loomed in her mind as a cold monument to corporate inflexibility and the devaluation of human kindness. The vibrant energy of Milan, usually a source of inspiration and opportunity, now felt oppressive, mirroring the weight of injustice that pressed down on her. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of disbelief and simmering resentment. Elena found herself replaying the curt, dismissive words of Vittorio Mancini, the cold glint in his eyes as he delivered the verdict. The stark contrast between his callousness and the quiet and unwavering gratitude in Shadow's gaze haunted her thoughts. The unfairness of it all gnawed at her, a constant reminder of the arbitrary power wielded within the corporate hierarchy. Yet, beneath the initial wave of despair, a flicker of defiance began to ignite. The injustice she had endured, rather than extinguishing her spirit, served as a catalyst for a quiet but resolute determination. She would not allow this arbitrary act to define her future or to diminish her inherent belief in the importance of compassion. Instead, she resolved to channel her anger and frustration into a constructive force, a means to not only reclaim her professional standing, but also to challenge the very values that had led to her dismissal. Elena began a meticulous and dispassionate analysis of her situation. She reread her employment contract, scrutinizing every clause, though a pragmatic part of her knew that legal recourse was unlikely against a company of Apex's stature. However, her years within the company had provided her with an invaluable and intimate understanding of its inner workings. She possessed a deep knowledge of Apex's strengths, its often overlooked weaknesses, its key personnel, and, crucially, its financial vulnerabilities. She had a comprehensive grasp of their past marketing strategies, their current client relationships, and their overall financial performance, insights that were now transforming from mere professional knowledge into potential strategic weapons. A daring idea, audacious in its initial conception, began to take root in the fertile ground of her frustration. The thought of simply seeking another marketing position within a similar corporate environment felt like a tacit acceptance of the injustice she had suffered. Instead, a far more radical notion began to solidify. What if she didn't attempt to claw her way back into Apex Innovations as a subordinate employee, subject once again to the whims of individuals like Vittorio Mancini? What if she approached the company from an entirely different position, a position of ultimate authority, one where her decisions could reshape its very structure and redefine its core values? The seemingly insurmountable dream of acquiring a significant stake in Apex Innovations, of wielding a decisive voice in its future direction, began to consume her thoughts. The financial chasm between her current unemployment and such a monumental acquisition seemed almost comical. However, Elena possessed a sharp analytical mind, honed by years of strategic planning and an innate ability to identify undervalued assets and untapped potential. She immersed herself in the complex world of finance, devouring books on investment strategies, mergers and acquisitions, and the volatile intricacies of the stock market. She began to meticulously analyze Apex Innovations' stock performance, identifying potential vulnerabilities, periods of instability, and key shareholders who might be receptive to a different vision for the company's future. Discreetly, Elena reached out to former colleagues she trusted, individuals who had also privately expressed their discomfort with Apex's increasingly cutthroat and impersonal corporate culture. She shared her story, her voice steady despite the lingering sting of betrayal, and then cautiously unveiled her audacious plan, carefully gauging their reactions and seeking their initial, confidential support. To her surprise, several of them, disillusioned with the prevailing management style and harboring their own grievances, expressed a quiet but firm willingness to assist her in any way they could, offering invaluable insider perspectives and potential future alliances. The initial steps were fraught with daunting challenges. Elena spent countless hours networking, attending investor conferences, and tirelessly refining her business plan, which now extended beyond marketing strategies to encompass a comprehensive vision for a more ethically grounded and employee-centric Apex innovations. She leveraged her deep understanding of the tech industry and her innovative ideas to present a compelling case to potential investors. The journey was arduous, marked by numerous rejections and moments when the sheer scale of her ambition threatened to overwhelm her resolve. But the memory of Vittorio Mancini's cold dismissal and the unwavering loyalty of a small street dog named Shadow served as her constant, unwavering motivation. This was no longer just about reclaiming her career. It was about proving that compassion and ethical conduct had a tangible value in the corporate world. The seeds of her audacious plan had been sown, and in the quiet hours of the night, fueled by injustice and a quiet, burning determination, they began to sprout, reaching towards a future that would ultimately leave the executives at Apex Innovations frozen in utter disbelief. Elena's entry into the high-stakes arena of venture capital and private equity was akin to a lone swimmer navigating a turbulent sea. Armed with her meticulously crafted business plan and the unwavering conviction born from injustice, she embarked on a relentless campaign to secure the substantial funding required to even contemplate acquiring a controlling stake in a behemoth like Apex Innovations. The initial responses were often polite but ultimately dismissive, a wall of skepticism erected by the established norms of the financial world, where sentiment rarely trumped spreadsheets and projected returns. She faced a barrage of probing questions from seasoned investors, their gazes sharp and their skepticism palpable. They scrutinized her lack of experience in mergers and acquisitions, her seemingly emotional investment in the outcome, and the unconventional nature of her motivation. Many struggled to reconcile her narrative of being fired for feeding a street dog with the hard-nosed realities of corporate finance, viewing it as a personal anecdote rather than a sound investment thesis. Elena learned to adapt her pitch, subtly shifting the emphasis from her personal grievance to the demonstrable business advantages of a more engaged and ethically conscious workforce, highlighting the potential for enhanced innovation, improved brand image, and long-term sustainability. Despite the initial resistance, Elena's sharp intellect, her deep understanding of the tech industry, and the quiet intensity of her determination began to chip away at the wall of skepticism. She found unexpected resonance with a handful of smaller, impact-focused investment firms, entities that explicitly sought out ventures with a strong social conscience and a commitment to ethical practices. These firms recognized the growing market demand for companies that aligned with evolving societal values, and saw the inherent potential in Elena's vision for a more responsible and ultimately more resilient Apex Innovations. Her insider knowledge of Apex's market position and her innovative marketing strategies, honed during her tenure within the company, also began to pique their financial interest. A pivotal turning point arrived when Elena connected with Isabella Conti, a formidable figure in the Italian business landscape. Isabella, a self-made billionaire renowned for her astute investment strategies and her unwavering commitment to ethical business practices, saw a unique potential in Elena. She recognized the young woman's intelligence, her quiet resilience, and the unyielding fire that burned beneath her composed exterior. Isabella became more than just a crucial investor. She emerged as a mentor, guiding Elena through the intricate complexities of mergers and acquisitions, leveraging her extensive network to introduce her to key financial players and providing invaluable strategic counsel gleaned from decades of experience at the highest levels of business. With Isabella's formidable backing, Elena's credibility within the financial community experienced a significant boost. More investors began to take her seriously, drawn by Isabella's reputation and Elena's increasingly compelling and well-articulated vision. She meticulously began to assemble a diverse consortium of investors, each bringing unique strengths, financial resources, and strategic insights to the table. It was a delicate and demanding process, requiring Elena to navigate complex negotiations, align disparate interests, and maintain a cohesive vision amongst a diverse group of stakeholders, each with their own financial objectives. Throughout this arduous journey, Elena remained anchored by her unwavering connection to Shadow. The small, scruffy street dog remained her steadfast companion, a tangible reminder of the human cost of corporate inflexibility and the enduring importance of empathy in a world often blinded by the relentless pursuit of profit. She often sought solace in his quiet presence during her moments of doubt, his unconditional loyalty serving as a powerful counterpoint to the cold indifference she had experienced at Apex Innovations. He became a silent symbol of the values she was determined to champion. As Elena's audacious plan began to gather significant momentum, whispers of unusual financial activity surrounding Apex Innovations started to circulate within the company's upper echelons. Initially dismissed as routine market fluctuations or the speculative maneuvers of institutional investors, these rumors gradually began to sow seeds of unease within the executive ranks. The leadership team, particularly the self-assured Vittorio Mancini, remained largely oblivious to the true nature of the gathering storm, their arrogance and ingrained belief in their own invincibility blinding them to the potential threat brewing beneath the surface. They could not fathom that a former employee, dismissed for such a seemingly insignificant act, could possibly orchestrate a move of this magnitude. They were about to learn a devastating lesson about the power of underestimation and the unforeseen consequences of a lack of empathy. The stage was being meticulously set for a corporate earthquake that would leave them frozen in utter disbelief. Elena's meticulously crafted strategy to gain control of Apex Innovations unfolded with the silent precision of a seasoned predator stalking its prey. Operating under the unassuming guise of Rossi Strategic Holdings, a name deliberately chosen to subtly echo her own, she and her carefully assembled consortium of investors initiated a series of calculated acquisitions of Apex's publicly traded shares. They moved with deliberate stealth, utilizing a complex network of shell corporations, discrete proxy buyers, and carefully timed market transactions to amass significant holdings without triggering any immediate alarms within the targeted company. Elena understood that the element of surprise was her most potent weapon. The longer the executives at Apex Innovations remained oblivious to the gathering storm, the more vulnerable they would be when the full force of her plan was finally unleashed. Her intimate understanding of Apex's financial landscape, gleaned from years within its own walls, proved to be an invaluable strategic advantage. Elena had identified key institutional shareholders who were growing increasingly restive due to the company's stagnant innovation pipeline, its consistently high employee turnover rate, and its seemingly unwavering focus on short-term profits at the expense of long-term sustainability and ethical considerations. She approached these influential stakeholders with a compelling vision for a revitalized Apex Innovations, a company that embraced a more progressive and employee-centric culture, fostered genuine innovation, and ultimately delivered more sustainable and ethical long-term value to its investors. Her genuine passion, coupled with her detailed and insightful analysis of Apex's untapped potential, resonated with several of these key players who quietly pledged their crucial support to her burgeoning endeavor, recognizing the potential for significant returns under a new, more forward-thinking leadership. Within the sleek, modern confines of Apex Innovations headquarters, a subtle undercurrent of unease began to ripple through the ranks. Though the executive leadership, particularly the self-assured Vittorio Mancini, remained largely insulated from the growing apprehension, whispers of unusual and significant trading activity in the company's stock, characterized by substantial volumes and inexplicable price fluctuations, started to circulate amongst the more financially astute employees. Rumors of a potential hostile takeover, initially dismissed as mere speculation, fueled by market volatility and the anxieties of junior staff began to linger in the air, casting a palpable shadow of uncertainty over the once unshakable confidence that had defined the company's tightly controlled culture. The unwavering certainty that had long characterized Apex's leadership began to show faint but discernible cracks. Elena, while orchestrating these intricate and high-stakes financial maneuvers with the calculated precision of a master strategist, remained firmly grounded by her unwavering connection to Shadow. The small, scruffy street dog served as a constant, tangible reminder of the human cost of corporate inflexibility and the enduring importance of empathy in a world often blinded by the relentless pursuit of profit. She made it a point to visit him regularly in the small park, finding solace in his quiet companionship and the unconditional loyalty that stood in stark contrast to the cold and dismissive treatment she had endured at the hands of Apex Innovations. He was a living embodiment of the values she was determined to champion and reinstate within the company that had so carelessly discarded her. As Rossi's strategic holdings stake in Apex Innovations steadily and surreptitiously grew, Elena began to exert subtle but increasing pressure on the company's leadership. Her investor partners started posing increasingly pointed and probing questions during Apex's quarterly earnings calls, publicly questioning the long-term sustainability of the company's current management practices, its declining employee retention rates, and its apparent reluctance to embrace more forward-thinking and socially responsible initiatives. They subtly highlighted areas where Apex was demonstrably lagging behind its competitors in terms of innovation, employee satisfaction, and ethical brand building. These seemingly innocuous inquiries began to sow seeds of doubt in the minds of other investors, influential market analysts, and even some members of Apex's own increasingly nervous board of directors. Vittorio Mancini, still ensconced in his arrogance and unwavering belief in his own indispensable role within the company's rigid hierarchy, dismissed these concerns as the predictable skepticism of minor shareholders or the irrelevant ramblings of market analysts who failed to grasp the brilliance of his leadership. He doubled down on his autocratic and impersonal management style, further alienating employees, stifling innovation, and inadvertently strengthening Elena's growing base of support within the company's increasingly disillusioned ranks. Several of Elena's former colleagues, who had maintained discreet contact with her, provided her with invaluable real-time insights into the escalating dissatisfaction within Apex Innovations, offering her a crucial strategic advantage in her carefully planned takeover. They painted a vivid picture of a company ripe for change, its employees yearning for a more humane, respectful, and forward-thinking leadership. The culminating phase of Elena's audacious plan involved securing a controlling interest in Apex Innovations. This required a significant financial outlay and a series of meticulously timed and strategically executed stock purchases, leveraging the collective financial power of her diverse investor consortium, skillfully guided by Isabella Conti's invaluable experience in mergers and acquisitions. They moved swiftly and decisively, capitalizing on moments of market uncertainty and the growing apprehension surrounding Apex's long-term prospects, quietly amassing the final critical shares needed to seize control of the company. The day the news broke, it reverberated through the sleek corridors of Apex Innovations like a seismic shockwave. A terse and unexpected press release announced that a majority stake in the company had been acquired by a previously obscure entity known as Rossi Strategic Holdings. For a fleeting moment, the name itself triggered a flicker of recognition in the minds of a few long-serving employees who remembered Elena's surname. As the subsequent details rapidly emerged, revealing Elena Rossi as the driving force behind the investment group and the new majority shareholder, a wave of profound disbelief and dawning horror washed over the executive leadership of Apex Innovations. The woman they had so carelessly dismissed for a simple act of kindness had quietly and methodically orchestrated a complete takeover of their entire corporate empire. The arrogance and short-sightedness that had led to Elena's unjust dismissal were about to be met with a shocking and undeniable reckoning, the full implications of which they could scarcely begin to comprehend. The news of Elena Rossi's successful acquisition of a controlling stake in Apex Innovations detonated within the company's sleek headquarters like a silent, invisible bomb. The initial shock, a collective gasp of disbelief that seemed to momentarily suspend the relentless hum of the office, rapidly morphed into a potent cocktail of anxiety, uncertainty, and for a significant portion of the workforce, a burgeoning sense of long-awaited vindication. The once unshakable confidence that had permeated the executive suites evaporated, replaced by hushed, urgent meetings behind closed doors and a palpable sense of impending upheaval. The rigid corporate hierarchy that had defined Apex Innovations for so long suddenly felt fragile, its future hanging precariously in the balance, subject to the whims of the woman they had so carelessly cast aside. Vittorio Mancini, the very architect of Elena's dismissal, the man whose unwavering belief in his own judgment had led to her termination over a simple act of kindness, was particularly blindsided by the news. The announcement struck him like a physical blow, leaving him reeling in the opulent isolation of his corner office. The arrogance that had once insulated him from the concerns and perspectives of those beneath him now offered no protection against the stark and undeniable reality of his monumental miscalculation. The woman he had so readily dismissed as sentimental and unprofessional had not only risen above his petty vindictiveness, but had returned to dismantle the very system he so rigidly upheld, wielding a power that now dwarfed his own. His face, usually a carefully constructed mask of stern authority and unwavering self-assurance, now betrayed a flicker of genuine fear and a dawning, chilling understanding of the profound and irreversible consequences of his actions. He frantically attempted to contact other members of the board, his voice tight with a mixture of panic and disbelief, but the air within Apex was thick with uncertainty, and long-standing loyalties were beginning to fray and shift in the face of this unexpected power shift. The rank-and-file employees, who had for years endured the often unfeeling and relentlessly demanding corporate culture of Apex Innovations, reacted to the news with a complex tapestry of emotions. The initial shock and disbelief gradually gave way to a cautious but palpable sense of optimism. Whispers of Elena's story, the injustice of her dismissal over a small act of compassion, had circulated amongst the employees over time, painting her as a victim of an overly rigid and uncaring management. The news of her return, not as a supplicant seeking reinstatement, but as the new owner wielding ultimate authority, sparked a quiet but fervent hope that perhaps, finally, things were about to change for the better within the often unyielding walls of Apex. Some of Elena's former colleagues, who had secretly maintained contact with her and quietly supported her endeavors, exchanged knowing glances, a shared sense of long-awaited justice hanging in the tense atmosphere of the office. Within mere hours of the official announcement, a terse and formal email circulated throughout Apex Innovations, summoning all employees to a mandatory company-wide virtual meeting scheduled for the following morning. The email, pointedly devoid of any celebratory tone or explanatory details, simply stated that the new majority shareholder, Ms. Elena Rossi, would be addressing the entire company. The stark brevity and formality of the message only amplified the prevailing sense of unease and heightened anticipation that gripped every department and every employee, from the executive suites to the entry-level cubicles. The following morning, a collective hush fell over the virtual meeting as Elena's image appeared on screens across the vast digital landscape of the company. She looked remarkably calm and composed, her gaze steady and direct, conveying a quiet strength that belied the tumultuous events that had led her to this moment. There was no trace of triumph or vindictiveness in her demeanor. Instead, she spoke with a measured tone and a clear, articulate vision for the future of Apex Innovations. Elena acknowledged the significant uncertainty and understandable anxiety that the acquisition had undoubtedly caused amongst the employees. She spoke briefly of her own history with the company, alluding to the circumstances of her departure without dwelling on the injustice she had endured. Instead, she focused on her fundamental reasons for acquiring Apex Innovations, emphasizing her deep-seated belief in the company's inherent potential and her unwavering commitment to fostering a more innovative, genuinely collaborative, and ethically grounded work environment. A stark contrast to the often ruthless culture that had prevailed. Elena then outlined her immediate plans for the company, which included a comprehensive and transparent review of Apex's existing policies, its often criticized corporate culture, and its long-term strategic goals. She announced the immediate formation of a diverse and representative committee, comprising employees from various departments and levels, tasked with the crucial responsibility of reviewing and revising the company's code of conduct. Significantly, she made it clear that the specific mandate of this committee was to ensure that acts of compassion and basic human kindness would not only be tolerated, but actively valued and protected within the workplace. A direct and powerful response to the very act for which she had been unjustly dismissed. She concluded her address with a message of cautious hope and a clear call for unity and shared purpose. Eleanor emphasized that her primary goal was not to dwell on the past or to seek retribution, but to collaboratively build a better and more sustainable future for Apex Innovations, one where genuine innovation thrived alongside fundamental human empathy, and where the diverse contributions of every single employee were truly valued and respected. Her words, though delivered with a quiet strength, carried a profound weight of sincerity that resonated deeply with many who had long felt marginalized, undervalued, or simply unseen within the often impersonal machinery of Apex Innovations. The landscape of the company had been irrevocably altered, and the woman who had been fired for an act of kindness was now firmly at the helm, ready to steer the corporate ship in a new, unexpected, and potentially transformative direction. The executives who had so readily dismissed her were now facing a future entirely shaped by her vision, a future they could never have imagined in their most arrogant moments. Following her impactful address to the company, Elena Rossi moved swiftly and decisively to implement the foundational changes she envisioned for Apex Innovations. Her immediate priority was to dismantle the long-entrenched culture of fear and rigid hierarchy that had stifled creativity and employee morale for years. She began by instituting a company-wide open-door policy, making herself and her newly appointed interim leadership team directly accessible to employees at all levels. This simple yet profound shift in accessibility, a stark contrast to the previous impenetrable layers of management, sent an immediate and powerful message that a new era of transparency, direct communication, and genuine collaboration had dawned within Apex. The formation of the committee, tasked with the crucial responsibility of reviewing and fundamentally revising Apex's often criticized code of conduct, was executed with similar speed and inclusivity. Elena ensured that the committee comprised a diverse cross-section of employees representing various departments, levels of seniority, and perspectives within the company. She made it unequivocally clear that the objective was to create a living document that not only outlined professional expectations, but also actively championed empathy, mutual respect, and a genuine recognition of the human element that underpinned all of Apex's endeavors. The deliberate inclusion of a specific clause explicitly protecting acts of kindness and compassion, a direct and potent response to the very act that had led to Elena's unjust dismissal, served as a powerful and symbolic cornerstone of the company's new ethical framework. The initial reaction from the vast majority of Apex employees was overwhelmingly positive, a collective exhalation of relief and a burgeoning sense of hope. Many who had felt marginalized, undervalued, or simply silenced under the previous regime embraced the newfound atmosphere of openness and the tangible feeling that their voices and contributions might finally be acknowledged and respected. Innovation teams, which had long languished under bureaucratic inertia and a pervasive fear of failure, began to re-energize, fueled by the promise of a more supportive, less punitive, and creatively stimulating environment. The pervasive sense of anxiety that had often characterized workplace interactions began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious, yet steadily growing sense of optimism and shared purpose. However, the response from the former executive leadership, particularly Vittorio Mancini and his core group of loyalists, was markedly different, ranging from a stunned silence of disbelief to a simmering undercurrent of thinly veiled resistance. Stripped of their former authority and witnessing the rapid dismantling of the rigid corporate structure they had so meticulously constructed and fiercely defended for years, They initially clung to a stubborn belief that this upheaval was merely a temporary aberration, a passing phase driven by emotion that would eventually give way to a return to the established order of ruthless efficiency and top-down control. Vittorio Mancini, isolated in his now strangely quiet and symbolically diminished corner office, attempted to rally support among the remaining board members who had been aligned with his regime, painting Elena as an inexperienced and sentimental leader whose focus on empathy and employee well-being would inevitably lead to a decline in the company's productivity, profitability, and overall market standing. Yet, Vittorio's increasingly desperate arguments fell on increasingly deaf ears. The board, now acutely aware of their own profound misjudgment in so readily dismissing Elena and facing the undeniable reality of her decisive control over the company, coupled with the surprisingly positive initial response from the employees and the subtle but encouraging signs in early performance metrics, began to strategically distance themselves from his increasingly isolated and anachronistic stance. Some board members even privately expressed a grudging admiration for Elena's audacity, her clear vision for a more sustainable future, and her unexpectedly effective leadership style. Elena, while resolutely focused on implementing these crucial and foundational cultural shifts within Apex, remained acutely aware of the lingering pockets of resistance emanating from the old guard. She approached the delicate situation with a strategic blend of firmness and a pragmatic understanding of human nature. She made it clear, through both her words and her actions, that while she deeply valued experience and expertise, she also expected a genuine willingness from all employees, regardless of their past positions, to actively embrace and contribute to the company's new values and its evolving direction. She offered opportunities for the former leadership to adapt, to learn, and to contribute their knowledge within the new framework, but she also conveyed a clear message that those who remained stubbornly entrenched in the old ways and actively sought to undermine the company's progress would eventually need to seek opportunities more aligned with their traditional corporate philosophies elsewhere. The transformation of Apex Innovations was underway, and while not without its inevitable growing pains, the direction was firmly set towards a more humane, collaborative, and ultimately more successful future. As the initial wave of change subsided at Apex Innovations, the long-term impact of Elena Rossi's leadership began to solidify, weaving itself into the very fabric of the company's identity. The open communication channels, initially met with cautious optimism, became deeply ingrained in the daily operations, fostering a genuine sense of shared purpose and empowering employees to contribute their insights and ideas without fear of reprisal. The collaborative spirit that Elena had championed began to permeate team dynamics, leading to more innovative solutions and a greater sense of collective ownership over projects. The revised code of conduct, once a symbolic gesture, evolved into a living document that guided ethical decision-making and fostered a culture of mutual respect and empathy. Acts of kindness, once grounds for dismissal, were now subtly encouraged and recognized, contributing to a more positive and supportive work environment. The fear that had previously stifled creativity and open communication steadily dissipated, replaced by a more trusting and collaborative atmosphere where employees felt valued for their contributions beyond mere productivity metrics. The company sponsored initiatives supporting local animal welfare organizations, directly inspired by Elena's bond with Shadow, blossomed into a significant aspect of Apex's corporate social responsibility. These initiatives not only provided tangible support to animals in need, but also fostered a strong sense of community engagement among employees, further solidifying the company's evolving identity as an organization that cared about more than just its bottom line. Financially, Apex Innovations began to demonstrate the tangible benefits of Elena's human-centric approach. The significant improvement in employee morale led to increased productivity, reduced turnover rates, and a more engaged and dedicated workforce. The company's enhanced ethical reputation and its commitment to social responsibility resonated strongly with a growing segment of consumers and clients, attracting new business opportunities and strengthening brand loyalty in an increasingly values-driven market. Elena's strategic vision, coupled with the influx of innovative ideas from a more empowered workforce, propelled Apex to new levels of success, demonstrating that a focus on people and values could indeed be a sustainable and profitable business model. The former leadership, particularly Vittorio Mancini and his remaining loyalists, found themselves increasingly isolated and out of step with the transformed company. Their attempts to subtly undermine Elena's initiatives and cling to the old ways proved futile against the overwhelming positive shift in employee morale and the company's improving performance. Their rigid adherence to outdated management philosophies and their inability to adapt to the new, more collaborative culture rendered them increasingly irrelevant within the evolving dynamics of Apex. One by one, they began to seek opportunities elsewhere, their departure marking the final dismantling of the old guard and solidifying Elena's vision for the company's future. Elena, while focused on steering Apex towards her long-term goals, never forgot the initial injustice that had set her on this extraordinary path. However, her focus remained on building a better future rather than dwelling on past grievances. She led with a quiet strength and a consistent commitment to the values she championed, demonstrating that true leadership lay not in autocratic control, but in fostering a culture of respect, empathy, and shared purpose. Years passed, and Apex Innovations became widely recognized not only for its technological innovation and market leadership, but also for its exceptional workplace culture and its genuine commitment to ethical practices and social responsibility. The story of Elena Rossi, the woman who was fired for feeding a street dog and then bought the whole company, became a legendary tale within the business world, a powerful and enduring reminder of the unforeseen consequences of injustice and the transformative potential of empathy and resilience. It served as an inspiring example of how personal values could be successfully integrated into the corporate world, leading to both significant financial prosperity and a more humane and fulfilling work environment for all. And somewhere in the city, a well-cared-for street dog named Shadow lived out his days, a quiet and constant reminder of the simple act of kindness that had set in motion an extraordinary and transformative chain of events, forever changing the landscape of Apex Innovations. As Elena began to implement her vision for a transformed Apex Innovations, and the initial resistance from the old guard started to wane, a new and unexpected layer of complexity emerged, threatening to derail her progress and expose a hidden underbelly within the company. While the majority of employees embraced the fresh atmosphere of collaboration and ethical conduct, a small but influential faction within the upper management, deeply entrenched in the old ways and harboring their own ambitions, began to subtly undermine Elena's initiatives. This faction, led by a shrewd and politically savvy executive named Julian Thorne, who had long been a close confidant of the now sidelined Mr. Mancini, viewed Elena's takeover not as an opportunity for positive change, but as a hostile disruption to their own carefully laid plans for future advancement within Apex. Thorne, a master of corporate maneuvering and backroom deals, began to quietly sow seeds of doubt among key stakeholders, subtly questioning Elena's leadership and hinting at potential instability under her unconventional approach. He painted a picture of a company adrift, its focus on compassion and employee well-being, a dangerous distraction from the core business objectives. Adding to the escalating tension, Elena's efforts to conduct a thorough and transparent review of the company's past practices began to uncover some deeply troubling irregularities. Discrepancies in financial records, questionable contract approvals, and a pattern of potentially unethical dealings started to surface, hinting at a level of corruption within the company's higher echelons that Elena had not anticipated. These discoveries suggested that Mr. Mancini's rigid control might have been masking a more sinister undercurrent of self-serving activities. As Elena and her newly formed ethics committee delved deeper into these irregularities, they began to encounter subtle but persistent forms of obstruction. Key documents would go missing, crucial witnesses would suddenly become unavailable, and a general atmosphere of secrecy and fear began to resurface in certain departments, suggesting that Thorne and his allies were actively working to conceal these potentially damaging truths. The stakes were raised considerably when Eleanor received an anonymous encrypted message hinting at a shadow network operating within Apex, a clandestine group involved in illicit activities that went far beyond mere mismanagement. The message warned Elena to be careful, suggesting that powerful individuals had a vested interest in keeping these secrets buried and would stop at nothing to protect themselves. This revelation introduced a significant element of intrigue and danger to Elena's already challenging endeavor. She was no longer just battling against ingrained corporate culture and the bruised egos of the former leadership. She was now potentially facing a hidden enemy with potentially criminal connections, operating in the shadows within her own company. The simple act of feeding a street dog had inadvertently led Elena down a path that now threatened to expose a dark and dangerous underbelly of Apex Innovations. The tension within the company became palpable. The initial optimism and hope among the general employees were now tinged with a renewed sense of unease, as whispers of financial irregularities and a potential internal power struggle began to circulate. Elena found herself increasingly isolated, unsure of who she could truly trust as she navigated this treacherous new landscape. The dream of transforming Apex into a more ethical and compassionate company now seemed intertwined with a dangerous quest to uncover hidden truths and confront potentially powerful adversaries lurking within its own walls. The stakes had been dramatically raised, and the future of Apex Innovations, and perhaps even Elena's own safety, hung precariously in the balance. Elena, now acutely aware of the potential danger lurking beneath the surface of Apex Innovations, proceeded with cautious determination to unravel the mysteries hinted at in the anonymous message. She assembled a small, trusted inner circle, comprising individuals she believed were genuinely committed to her vision for a more ethical company and who possessed the skills and discretion necessary for such a sensitive investigation. This team, operating with utmost secrecy, began to meticulously examine the financial records and scrutinize past transactions, looking for patterns and connections that might shed light on the alleged shadow network. Their initial findings were deeply unsettling. They uncovered a series of off-the-books accounts, payments to seemingly non-existent entities, and unusually lucrative contracts awarded to companies with questionable backgrounds and close ties to certain members of the former leadership, including Julian Thorne. The deeper they delved, the more it became apparent that these irregularities were not mere oversights or instances of mismanagement, but rather a deliberate and systematic effort to siphon company funds and potentially engage in more illicit activities. As Elena's team pieced together the fragmented evidence, they began to suspect that the shadow network might be involved in activities far more serious than simple financial fraud. Whispers of potential bribery, insider trading, and even connections to organized crime began to surface, creating a chilling atmosphere of paranoia and suspicion within their small investigative group. The anonymous message's warning to be careful now seemed particularly ominous. Meanwhile, Julian Thorne, sensing Elena's growing scrutiny and the increasing unease among some of his allies, began to subtly consolidate his own power base within the company. He cultivated relationships with key department heads, spreading rumors about Elena's inexperience and her idealistic approach, suggesting that her focus on ethics and employee well-being was jeopardizing the company's profitability and future. He positioned himself as a steady and reliable alternative, subtly hinting that a return to more traditional leadership might be necessary to stabilize Apex. Elena, though increasingly concerned by Thorne's maneuvering and the disturbing discoveries of her investigative team, remained outwardly focused on the company's ongoing transformation. She continued to champion her initiatives for greater transparency and ethical conduct, knowing that a strong ethical foundation was the best defense against internal corruption. She also subtly began to restructure the company's reporting lines and internal controls, strategically placing trusted individuals in key positions to monitor financial activities and prevent further illicit dealings. A crucial breakthrough in Elena's investigation came from an unexpected source, one of Mr. Mancini's former longtime executive assistants, a woman named Sophia, no relation to Elena, the protagonist, who had grown increasingly disillusioned with the former regime's opaque practices and had been quietly documenting suspicious activities for years. Fearful of retaliation, She had initially remained silent, but witnessing Elena's genuine commitment to change, she finally decided to come forward, providing Elena's team with a treasure trove of incriminating documents and first-hand accounts that corroborated their findings and painted a damning picture of widespread corruption. Sophia's testimony and the evidence she provided directly implicated Julian Thorne and several other high-ranking executives in the shadow network, revealing their involvement in a complex web of fraudulent activities and illicit dealings. The connections to potentially dangerous external entities became chillingly clear. Elena now understood that she was not just fighting to reform a company culture. She was potentially dismantling a criminal enterprise operating within its very core. The stakes had reached a critical level, and the path forward was fraught with danger. But Elena knew she couldn't back down. The simple act of feeding a street dog had inadvertently thrust her into a battle for the very soul of Apex Innovations, a battle that would require immense courage and unwavering resolve. Armed with the compelling evidence provided by Sophia and the meticulous work of her trusted inner circle, Elena knew she had reached a critical juncture. The depth and breadth of the corruption within Apex Innovations were far more extensive and potentially dangerous than she had initially imagined. The shadow network, with Julian Thorne at its apparent center, had tentacles reaching into various departments and potentially extending beyond the company's walls. Elena realized that a direct confrontation would be necessary, but she also understood the inherent risks involved. Thorne and his allies were powerful and ruthless individuals with a clear motive to protect their illicit activities. She needed to proceed strategically, ensuring she had irrefutable proof and a secure plan to expose them without jeopardizing her own safety or the stability of the company. She discreetly contacted external legal counsel and forensic accounting experts, sharing the evidence her team had gathered. Their initial assessment confirmed the severity of the situation, advising Elena to proceed with extreme caution and to involve law enforcement at the appropriate moment. They began working with Elena's team to build an airtight case, meticulously documenting every irregularity and tracing the flow of illicit funds. Meanwhile, the tension within Apex Innovations became increasingly palpable. Whispers of Elena's investigation and the rumors of a potential shadow network spread like wildfire through the company's grapevine. Employees, who had long suspected something was amiss but had been too afraid to speak out, began to watch Elena with a mixture of hope and trepidation. They sensed that a reckoning was coming, but the potential fallout remained uncertain. Julian Thorne, charged out Elena's growing scrutiny and the increasingly nervous demeanor of some of his associates, began to subtly escalate his efforts to undermine her authority. He leaked carefully curated information to select members of the media, painting Elena as an inexperienced and impulsive leader whose radical changes were destabilizing the company and alienating long-standing clients. He attempted to rally support among the remaining board members, portraying himself as the steady hand needed to navigate the company through these turbulent times. Elena, aware of Thorne's countermoves, remained focused on her investigation, knowing that solid evidence was her most powerful weapon. She continued to implement her reforms, strengthening internal controls and promoting transparency, subtly dismantling the structures that had allowed the shadow network to flourish for so long. The conflict reached a critical turning point when Elena's team uncovered irrefutable proof directly linking Julian Thorne to a series of fraudulent transactions involving offshore accounts and shell corporations. The evidence suggested that Thorne had been actively siphoning company funds for personal gain and potentially using those funds for even more nefarious purposes. With this damning evidence in hand, Elena knew it was time to act. She scheduled a private meeting with the remaining members of the board of directors, presenting them with the findings of her investigation. The evidence was so compelling, and the implications so severe that even Thorne's staunchest allies on the board could not deny the truth. A stunned silence filled the room as the gravity of the situation sank in. Elena laid out her plan, a coordinated effort to expose the shadow network, involve law enforcement, and take decisive action to remove the corrupt individuals from positions of power within Apex Innovations. The conflicts had reached a critical turning point, setting the stage for a climactic confrontation that would determine not only the future of the company, but also Elena's own fate as she prepared to confront the darkness that had been festering within the heart of Apex. The simple act of feeding a street dog had led her to the precipice of a high-stakes battle for the integrity of an entire corporation. With the backing of the majority of the board, who were now reeling from the shocking revelations of her investigation, Elena initiated her carefully orchestrated plan to confront the shadow network operating within Apex Innovations. Her first decisive action was to discreetly alert the appropriate law enforcement agencies, providing them with the preliminary evidence gathered by her team and the forensic accountants. The authorities, recognizing the potential scale and severity of the alleged crimes, launched a parallel investigation, working closely with Elena's trusted inner circle. Elena knew that timing was crucial. She needed to act swiftly and decisively before Thorn and his allies could further conceal evidence or potentially take more drastic measures to protect themselves. She scheduled a series of private meetings with key department heads and senior managers, individuals she believed were either unaware of the corruption or were potentially being coerced into complicity. During these meetings, she presented carefully selected pieces of evidence, painting a clear picture of the illicit activities and emphasizing her commitment to restoring integrity and ethical conduct to Apex Innovations. Her honesty and her clear vision for a better future for the company began to sway those who had been on the fence or had harbored doubts about her leadership. The tension within Apex reached fever pitch as rumors of an impending internal shakeup began to circulate. Julian Thorn, sensing the shift in the atmosphere and the increasingly wary glances from some of his former allies, became more desperate in his attempts to consolidate power and discredit Elena. He intensified his campaign in the media, portraying her as a reckless and vindictive leader bent on destroying the company for personal gain. He also began making veiled threats to those he suspected of cooperating with Elena's investigation. Elena, however, remained resolute, her focus unwavering. She knew that the truth was her most powerful weapon. She prepared a comprehensive presentation of her findings, including irrefutable documentary evidence and corroborated testimonies, which she scheduled to present at an emergency meeting of the entire company. This was a high-stakes gamble, a direct confrontation that would either expose the darkness within Apex or potentially backfire spectacularly, jeopardizing her own position and the future of the company. As the date of the company-wide meeting approached, the atmosphere within Apex was electric with anticipation and apprehension. Employees gathered in hushed groups, speculating about the rumors and bracing for the unknown. Julian Thorn and his remaining loyalists watched Elena with a mixture of defiance and a growing unease, sensing that their carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The emergency meeting began with Elena addressing the company with a calm but firm demeanor. She spoke of her initial vision for a more ethical and innovative Apex, a vision that had been clouded by the disturbing discoveries of the past few weeks. She then proceeded to lay bare the evidence of the shadow network, meticulously presenting the fraudulent transactions, the off-the-books accounts, and the direct links to Thorn and his allies. The silence in the vast auditorium was absolute as the gravity of her revelations sank in. The evidence was damning, and as Elena concluded her presentation, the shock and disbelief among the employees were palpable. The carefully cultivated image of Apex as a paragon of corporate success was shattered, replaced by the ugly reality of internal corruption. The conflicts had reached a critical turning point, and the decisions that would follow would determine the future trajectory of Apex Innovations and the fate of those who had operated in its shadows. Elena had laid her cards on the table, and the climax was imminent. The stunned silence that gripped the auditorium following Elena's damning presentation was thick with disbelief and dawning anger. The carefully constructed facade of Apex Innovations had been shattered, revealing a rot that had been festering beneath the surface for years. Employees exchanged horrified glances, their trust in the company's leadership irrevocably broken. The weight of the revelations hung heavy in the air, a palpable sense of betrayal and uncertainty about the future. Julian Thorn, initially maintaining a facade of indignant denial, watched the room with a calculating gaze, assessing the shifting allegiances and the rising tide of disbelief directed at him and his implicated allies. He attempted to regain control of the narrative, launching into a vehement defense, accusing Elena of fabricating evidence and orchestrating a malicious takeover fueled by personal vendetta. His voice, though loud and forceful, lacked the conviction it once held, his carefully crafted image of corporate integrity crumbling before the stark reality of Elena's documented findings. However, Thorne's desperate attempts to discredit Elena fell largely on deaf ears. The sheer volume and irrefutable nature of the evidence she had presented, coupled with the corroborating testimonies of individuals who had long suffered in silence, had swayed the majority of the employees and even some of the previously wavering board members. The atmosphere in the auditorium began to shift from stunned silence to a low murmur of outrage and a growing sense of solidarity with Elena's courageous actions. The tension reached a fever pitch when several key department heads, individuals who had initially been hesitant to speak out, stood up and publicly corroborated Elena's findings, detailing instances of coercion, intimidation, and direct involvement in the illicit activities orchestrated by Thorne and his network. Their courageous testimonies further solidified the truth of Elena's accusations and left Thorne increasingly isolated and exposed. As the tide of public opinion within the company turned decisively against him, Thorne's carefully constructed composure finally began to crack. His denials became more frantic, his accusations more desperate, revealing the fear that now gripped him. He made veiled threats, alluding to powerful connections and potential repercussions for those who dared to stand against him. Elena, watching Thorne's increasingly desperate attempts to cling to power, remained calm and resolute. She reiterated her commitment to transparency and justice, assuring the employees that she would work tirelessly to restore integrity to Apex Innovations and to ensure that those responsible for the corruption would be held accountable. She announced the immediate suspension of Thorne and the other implicated executives, pending the ongoing investigation by law enforcement. The peak of tension arrived as Thorne, in a final act of defiance, attempted to physically confront Elena on the stage, his face contorted with rage. However, he was quickly intercepted by security personnel, their actions met with a collective sigh of relief from the assembled employees. The symbolic removal of Thorne from the stage marked a decisive turning point, signaling the end of the old guard's reign of corruption and paving the way for Elena's vision of a new Apex. The stage was now set for the climax. The darkness that had been festering within Apex had been exposed, and the forces of integrity and justice, led by the woman who had been wronged for a simple act of kindness, were poised to prevail. The resolution of this high-stakes battle for the soul of the company was imminent, promising a future where ethical conduct and genuine human values would finally take precedence over greed and corruption. The removal of Julian Thorne from the stage, a tangible symbol of the crumbling old guard, marked the beginning of the immediate unraveling of the shadow network within Apex Innovations. The stunned silence of the auditorium gradually gave way to a palpable sense of liberation and a burgeoning hope for a more transparent and ethical future. Employees, many of whom had operated under a cloud of fear and suspicion for years, began to cautiously approach Elena and her trusted inner circle, offering their own accounts and providing further corroborating evidence of the illicit activities. Law enforcement, who had been working diligently behind the scenes, moved swiftly to secure the offices of Thorne and the other implicated executives, seizing documents and digital records that further solidified the case against them. The depth and complexity of the corruption began to fully emerge, revealing a tangled web of fraudulent transactions, offshore accounts, and questionable dealings that had siphoned significant resources from Apex for personal gain and potentially for more nefarious purposes. As the authorities conducted their investigation, Elena, now firmly at the helm of Apex, addressed the company once more, her tone resolute but also reassuring. She acknowledged the pain and betrayal that many employees were feeling, but emphasized her unwavering commitment to restoring integrity and building a company based on trust and ethical conduct. She outlined the immediate steps being taken to cooperate fully with the authorities, to recover any misappropriated funds, and to implement stringent new internal controls to prevent such corruption from ever taking root again. However, the climax held a surprising twist. As Elena's team delved deeper into the seized records, they uncovered evidence suggesting that the shadow network had been involved in something far more insidious than mere financial fraud. They discovered encrypted communications hinting at potential industrial espionage, the theft of intellectual property and even the deliberate sabotage of competitors' projects. The scope of the betrayal extended beyond the company's finances, reaching into the very heart of its innovative spirit and its competitive standing within the tech industry. This revelation raised the stakes considerably. Elena realized that her fight was not just about restoring ethical conduct, it was about protecting the very future and integrity of Apex Innovations. She made the difficult decision to bring in specialized cybersecurity experts and legal teams to fully investigate these more serious allegations, determined to uncover the full extent of the damage and to hold all those responsible accountable. The climax arrived not in a single dramatic confrontation, but in the methodical and determined unraveling of the entire corrupt network. As the authorities built their case and Elena's team continued their internal investigation, more individuals within Apex, emboldened by the change in leadership and the promise of a more ethical environment, came forward with crucial information. The shadow network, once seemingly impenetrable, began to crumble from within, its members facing the consequences of their actions. Julian Thorne, stripped of his power and facing serious criminal charges, made a desperate attempt to negotiate a deal, offering to cooperate with the authorities in exchange for leniency. However, Elena, determined to see justice served and to send a clear message that such corruption would not be tolerated, refused to compromise. The climax concluded with the final removal of the corrupt elements from Apex Innovations, their actions exposed and their careers in ruins. Elena, having navigated this treacherous landscape with unwavering resolve and a steadfast commitment to her values, stood firmly at the helm, ready to lead a revitalized Apex into a brighter future, one built on a foundation of integrity, innovation, and a genuine respect for its employees and its ethical responsibilities. The company that had once fired a woman for an act of kindness had been brought to the brink by greed and corruption, only to be saved and transformed by that same woman's unwavering commitment to doing what was right. The extraordinary saga of Elena Rossi's return to Apex Innovations, not as a dismissed employee but as its transformative leader, serves as a powerful and enduring narrative within the often cynical landscape of the corporate world. Her story transcends a simple tale of personal triumph over adversity, evolving into a compelling testament to the profound and often underestimated power of empathy, the indomitable strength of the human spirit when fueled by a sense of injustice, and the far-reaching and unforeseen consequences that can arise when even the smallest acts of kindness are met with callous disregard. Elena's initial seemingly insignificant act of extending compassion to a vulnerable street dog, Shadow, became the unlikely catalyst for a monumental corporate upheaval, exposing a deep vein of corruption that threatened to undermine the very foundations of Apex Innovations. The short-sighted and ultimately self-destructive decision by the company's former leadership, driven by a narrow and sterile definition of professionalism, to dismiss Elena for this simple act of humanity, ultimately paved the way for their own dramatic downfall and the company's near demise. They failed to recognize the quiet but unwavering resolve that resided within Elena, mistaking her empathy for weakness and underestimating the profound impact of injustice on a determined spirit. The audacity of Elena's subsequent plan to acquire the very company that had so readily discarded her, fueled by the burning sting of unfairness and a deep-seated conviction in a more ethical and human-centered approach to business, serves as a powerful illustration of her sharp intellect, unwavering strategic focus, and remarkable resilience. Her meticulous planning, her ability to forge crucial alliances within the often cutthroat world of finance, and her unwavering commitment to her vision transformed a seemingly impossible aspiration into a stunning and undeniable reality, ultimately saving Apex from the brink of internal collapse. The profound and lasting transformation of Apex Innovations under Elena's leadership offers a compelling and inspiring blueprint for a more sustainable and ultimately more successful model of corporate governance. By prioritizing open and honest communication, fostering a genuinely collaborative and supportive work environment where employees feel valued and empowered, and by embedding fundamental principles, Elena not only righted a deeply personal wrong, but also steered Apex towards greater innovation, enhanced productivity, and a more positive and impactful role within the wider community, demonstrating that integrity and profitability can indeed go hand in hand. The dramatic exposure and removal of the corrupt shadow network, symbolized by the ignominious downfall of Julian Thorne and his allies, underscores the inherent fragility of unethical practices and the ultimate triumph of transparency and justice. Elena's unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth, even in the face of potential danger, serves as a powerful reminder that moral courage and a strong ethical compass are indispensable qualities of true leadership, capable of not only saving a company from internal destruction, but also setting a new standard for corporate responsibility. Ultimately, Elena Rossi's extraordinary story stands as a potent and inspiring reminder that even seemingly small acts of kindness can trigger profound and far-reaching consequences, rippling outwards to affect not just individuals, but entire organizations and communities. It challenges the often narrow and outdated definitions of professionalism and success in the corporate world, suggesting that true strength lies not in cold detachment, but in the ability to connect with others on a human level and to build organizations based on principles of respect, empathy, and ethical conduct. The legacy of the woman who was fired for feeding a street dog is not just one of personal triumph, but also a beacon of hope for a more compassionate and ultimately more successful future for the world of business, proving that doing good and doing well are not mutually exclusive but are in fact intrinsically linked. Elena Rossi's incredible journey from being unjustly fired to saving and transforming Apex Innovations is a powerful testament to the enduring power of kindness, resilience, and unwavering integrity in the face of corporate injustice and hidden corruption. Her story challenges us to reflect on the values we prioritize in our workplaces and in our own lives. What resonated most with you in Elena's courageous fight for justice and her unwavering vision for a more ethical and human-centered company? Do you believe that integrity and compassion can truly be the foundation of lasting business success? Share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. If you were deeply inspired by Elena's remarkable resilience and her unwavering commitment to her values, please subscribe to our channel for more compelling stories of courage, determination, and the transformative power of ethical leadership in the face of adversity. And don't miss our next video, where we explore other astonishing tales of individuals who dared to challenge corruption and build organizations based on principles of integrity and human kindness, proving that one person's conviction can indeed make a profound and lasting difference in the world of business and beyond. Click here to watch now and continue to be inspired by the power of the human spirit to overcome injustice and create positive change. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey. We hope Elena's story has left you with a renewed sense of hope and a deeper understanding of the transformative power of standing up for what is right, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.